How many of you out there have a space outside of your home that you wish was a bit more private? Maybe you live near a busy street or you have nosy neighbors. Whatever your dilemma, I've got a solution for you. Today I'm going to show you how to build a privacy screen for an outdoor space. I'm going to take you through the step-by-step process and teach you how to do it right. I'm confident that by the end of this video, you'll be able to take what you learned and do it yourself. When we talk about a privacy screen, we're not talking about a full-length fence. Think of it more like a partition that can block off a portion of your yard. Privacy screens not only create a much-needed barrier, but they're also great for adding some style. The first thing you need to determine is the location of your privacy screen. Is it going into the ground, on a deck? Is it part of a patio? What you're attaching it to will determine part of your design and the materials that you need. For this situation, we're gonna be putting the privacy screen in front of the pool filter. The pool filter's right off of the pool. It's a beautiful backyard, but it's not something you really wanna look at. This is a great example of how a privacy screen can help you hide something that you need to access, but you don't necessarily wanna look at it all the time. My friend John is starting some measurements. He's a licensed contractor and he's gonna be helping me throughout this project. So we're gonna explain where we're putting it, why we're putting it, and get our measurements. Here, we have our pool filter and we wanna hide the front and side, right? So we're gonna go for two sides, kind of an L shape, but we're figuring out our exact length and our height. So what'd you come up with?
So we have 39 inches from the edge of that trim over to the edge of this post.
Okay.
So if we dig our footers here, we can have our front screen at 39 inches that are right here. That's
okay.
Right here.
And as far as our height goes, we're kind of letting our utility determine how high we need to go because we want to cover that outlet. So how high is that?
We have 72 inches to the top of this electrical box.
Yeah, okay.
Which is conveniently the same place as where the top of this post is.
It's perfect.
And since this is already footered all the way down, so if we attach right to that,
yep,
we should be in good shape. Out here, we're clear with the pipes, so we can dig a footer and we'll be in good shape.
For our situation, we're gonna be able to work off of the existing deck post back against the house, and then we'll install 2 additional posts here in the front. Okay, it's time to create a materials list. This screen should be a fairly simple build for us and for you at home if you know your way around some power tools. Now, every privacy screen's materials list could look a little different depending on the size and the design you choose. For our purposes, we need the following: 3 4x4x8 pressure-treated lumber posts, 1x6x8s for horizontal slats, stainless steel screws, 6-inch Fasten Master headlocks, 1 box of stainless steel ring-shanked nails, 2 bags of gravel, 4 50-pound bags of fast-setting concrete, and a couple gallons of water. All right, we're gonna get ready to start digging our holes for our posts. And what we need to do is make sure we're exactly placed. So our privacy screen is gonna be at a 90-degree angle. So one post will go here, then the screen will continue on, and then the other post will go right here. So what we have is marking paint, and now we're gonna mark those holes, dig our holes, and then we'll go build the rest of our screen that fits it exactly. Another thing to mention is that anytime you're putting up any sort of permanent structure like this, you wanna check with your local building codes and zoning and just see if you have to pull a permit.
And then you wanna call 811 to make sure that you have no utilities that you're messing with.
For the diameter of the hole, basically how big, how wide do I need to make my hole, the way to do it is to calculate 3 times the size of what's going into it. This is a 4x4, so 4 inches times 3, I need a 12-inch hole. You can do this a couple different ways. We're gonna be digging our holes and putting in our posts first because we do have a good bit of plumbing under the ground here. Now, we've checked with our pool guy and we have a pretty good idea. I think we're gonna be safe, but we still feel like that would be the better route. It's also a great idea to keep some plastic on hand that if you need to move some dirt, which we're gonna be unloading a lot, you can put it onto a tarp and it doesn't kill your grass. Also, it's easier to move it if you have excess. All right, when you're using a post hole digger, it's really great, it does a lot of the work for you. When you drop it down into your hole, your handles are together, then you'll spread the handles apart, lets it grab all the dirt, bring it out, and then put them back together to release it. We're going down about 24 inches. Now, we're in a really warm climate, but if you're in an area that can freeze, you wanna know what your frost line is, and you generally wanna make sure that your hole goes 6 inches below that frost line.
And the reason why is if any water gets below that and freezes, it could heave the post up out of the ground. So basically, if you're up in the Northeast and your freeze line is at 36 inches, you wanna go to 42, that way it keeps the post from coming up out of the ground.
Now that we've got our hole to 24 inches deep, we're come to a really important step. We need to add 4 inches of crushed stone or gravel to the bottom of the hole. The stone will help with drainage around the post. This simple measure will also provide a solid level surface for our post to sit on. All right, our gravel is in, it's been tamped down by the post, and now what we need to do is determine how much of the top of this post we need to trim off so that it's the exact height we want this privacy screen to be. All right, so we're using the level coming off the top of the post, which is gonna be the very top of our privacy screen. And now once John's level, I am going to measure down into my tamped stone. I have a flat surface, and that'll tell me exactly the height that my post should be cut down to. We are at 95 inches.
We got our reference point here, and then we'll level off of that. Now this measurement's not gonna be exactly 95. It could be a little more, it could be a little less.
Right, depending on exactly where our stone landed, but we're pretty close, 94 3/4.
All right,
okay.
Cool.
All right, so we've set up a little workstation here, and when you're about to build, it really is important to be working on a level surface. So we got 2 sawhorses and then a sturdy piece of plywood that we'll work off of. And even went for a little luxury, popped up a tent to keep us out of the sun and comfortable as we're building. As I mentioned, we are going to be building this privacy screen with an L shape, and so I did a rough sketch. I'm not an artist, but it shows you guys a little bit of what we're gonna be doing. While we're over here under the tent with our workstation, we're gonna be focusing on building this larger portion, and then the smaller area over here will actually be built in place because part of that's gonna be working off of the deck. Okay, so the first part of this build is gonna be actually cutting down our 4x4s, which we leveled and measured and got our lengths on. And to do that, we're gonna be using a circular saw.
So for cutting these down, I think using a circular saw is gonna be a better option than using a miter saw or something like that. This has a little bit more agility, so we can kind of like work through, and you're not throwing a piece of heavy lumber on top of, you know, a miter saw.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a preference thing, but for us, we're gonna go with the circular saw. And John mentioned that these are heavy. I also should mention that they are pressure treated. Anytime you have wood that's gonna come in contact with the ground, you wanna make sure that you're using pressure treated because that will prevent rot. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is that when you're using pressure treated lumber, you can't paint or stain it immediately. So our privacy screen is gonna need to dry and cure for like 1 to 2 months before we can actually apply stain. You wanna really check out your individual product and what you plan to do to it, and the timing will vary a little bit. All right, so we're gonna start off by measuring and cutting our wood. All right, so we're gonna measure 95 inches. So John's just marking it, and then I'm using a speed square to give myself a nice straight line. So the blade on our circular saw is not deep enough to cut all the way through this 4x4. So what John's doing is marking our measurement on all 4 sides. This way we can cut, then flip the board and cut again, and we'll be cut all the way through. And now we're gonna safety up and use our circular saw to make these cuts.
So one of the things that I really like about the saw is it's obviously light, it's not corded. It has a thumb lock, which is great for safety. So if I go and pull the trigger right now, it's not gonna start. So you wanna make sure that your blade is clear of the blade guard, but when you come into it, you want to make sure I'm pressing my thumb lock down, pulling the trigger, and you're starting away from the material. If you come into it and then try to start it, it's going to jam up a little bit. So when we go to engage, I'm going to use the speed square, and it's going to act as a guide along with the pencil line.
So to use the speed square, line up the blade with your cut line, and then you can take the speed square, slide it up, and then hold it securely. This is a great way to make sure you get a nice, straight, steady cut. Pressure treated wood is treated with chemicals, and you don't want to breathe in any of the chemicals when you're cutting via the sawdust. You want to make sure that you are using a respirator dust mask. You also always want to make sure that you're using eye protection when you're working with any type of power tool. And we're going to cut through, flip it, and cut again. Okay, so our 2 main posts are cut to size, but this third 4x4 we need to cut down for our top and bottom rails on the main section.
So our total is 39 inches,
Yep.
so we're going to subtract 3.5 inches because these are actually 3.5, not
Right.
a true 4 inches.
4x4s are 3.5, tricky, I know.
So that brings us out to 32 inches.
All right, so the total cut is gonna be 32. When these add on, we're at 39, right?
Correct.
Okay. So all of our posts are cut to size, and now we're building out what will be the framework for our larger side of the privacy screen. We've clamped one of our long vertical posts to our plywood so that it's super secure, and that will hold everything in place while we begin building. So now what we need to do is attach all of these posts together, and what we're using here are screws that are treated specifically with a coating for pressure treated wood. All right, so we're gonna start attaching down at the other end and give you one of these. Now, I should note, these are really long 6-inch fasteners, but that's what we need because it's gonna go all the way through the one post and grip into the next one.
So this is an impact driver. The difference between this and a regular drill, it has enough torque to be able to drive through this without needing to pre-drill it.
All right, we're gonna put 2 on each end. Okay, so now that we have our frame all set, we're gonna get moving on to the wooden slats. And this is where you can really get creative and have a little bit of fun and change up the style. We are going with 1x6 pieces of wood, and I've decided that I wanna make this look kind of like the fence, so we're going to separate them, just put a little gap in between, and just consistent horizontal slats. But you could go with a combination of wider boards and thinner boards. You could vary the space between them. You could go vertically. This is really where you have complete creative control. The first thing before we can actually attach these, we need to cut the boards down to size. John's gonna cut them down to exactly 39 inches. So the boards will cover from one post all the way to the other post, a perfect 39 inches, and then we'll attach them. Okay, now that all of our boards are cut down to size, we can attach them onto the framework, and we're gonna be doing that using a hammer and galvanized patio deck nails. The reason that we're using these is that they are exterior, they're gonna work really well with our pressure treated lumber, and they're ring shanked. And also, just because you will see these nail heads, we went ahead and measured exactly where they'll go on each board so that we have a consistent straight line all the way down. Okay, so we have our first board attached, but now we need to determine the spacing between each board. I got a little trick for you. I like to call it a cheater block. And basically I cut a scrap piece of one of our 1x here, and we use this exact same piece every time. We're gonna have consistent straight lines and not have to measure every single one as we go. It's a really quick way to do it and still get consistency. Go back in here, sit down. All right, so this is the main panel. The privacy screen is built, and now what we're gonna do is put it down into our pre-dug holes. We're gonna fill it with concrete. We're gonna make sure we're nice and level, brace it up. And then once this piece is installed, we'll build off the house and add the smaller turning section of our L shape. Now that our posts are in our holes, we wanna make sure that our privacy screen is level and plumb. So level horizontally and then vertically level, which is plumb. All right, first thing we're doing is leveling off of our fixed point, which is our deck post here.
I'm pretty happy with that.
We did a pretty good job with our holes, and the distance in our measuring, this side is level. Now we're gonna level across the front. Pretty close, maybe a little bit high on that side. So John's just gonna use a hammer and tap it down just a bit. Good?
Good.
We're attaching temporary braces to the front and sides of our privacy screen so that we'll hold it sturdy in place when we put our concrete in. To make these braces, we're attaching a 1x4 onto each side and then putting stakes into the ground. John's leveling, and once I know he's exactly where we want it, I'm attaching a screw through the side of my 1x4 into the stake, holding it securely in place. For stakes, you can pick some up at Lowe's, or you can cut them yourself out of any leftover scrap wood. You just want to make sure that you have an angled point at the bottom. It makes it easier to go right into the ground. All right, so to make sure that our posts are super secure, we're adding some quick dry concrete that's gonna go down into the holes. We're using a fast setting concrete, and we picked up about 4 or 5 bags. Each hole is taking about 2 bags each. What I really like about this is that we don't need to pre-mix it. So we're not adding our concrete and water in a bucket and then putting it in. We can add the concrete to our hole dry and then add water on top, and it'll still give you the strength and durability, but kind of save us a couple extra steps. You wanna stop about 4 to 6 inches from the top of the hole. You can also check out another how-to video on setting your post into concrete. Click the link. We're moving on to building the smaller portion of our privacy screen. This is the section that's gonna be a little bit smaller and actually attached to the post on the deck. John's attached a spacer board and then a 2x4 directly onto the deck post that gets us nice and straight and level. So we'll work off of that. And now he's leveling, and we're gonna measure out and cut our slats exactly for each piece. One thing to remember is that we're lining up our slats perfectly with the same location and positioning that the other ones had. We're using the same hammer and nails and keeping our spacing the same as we did on the front side, just to give it, again, a look of consistency. So now we're gonna use our cheater block on the back side, but on the front, we're more concerned with making sure it visually looks perfectly aligned. We're also hitting the ends with a little bit of sandpaper just to make sure that it's nice and smooth and finished. For my bottom 3 boards, I'm gonna install them just a little bit differently. We wanna be able to easily access the plumbing in here. So even though this is a privacy screen, if you have an area where you want it to be private but also easily accessible, I'm going to use screws to put these ones in. This is much easier than if I were to continue with a hammer and nails. With the nails, it would be hard, I'd have to pry it back off, but with the drill and screws, if we ever need to access down there, it's just we can zip them back out and easily put them back on. Okay, now that we have all of these horizontal boards on, the only thing that remains are to attach the top 2, and that will require us to take our brace off, which we can totally do now because this is really secure. All of these boards are fastened into this post, and it's good to remove it. Okay, so we're just about done. We need to remove the rest of our temporary braces, and then we need to backfill the dirt around our holes, set everything back up so we're good as new. So we saved dirt from when we dug the holes, and we're using that to backfill in. We left about 4 to 6 inches at the top of our concrete, so now we just need to get this all back to normal. Okay, our build is complete and our privacy screen looks awesome. It's doing exactly what we intended, blocking the pool filter, and it's even gonna help out with the noise a bit. Even though our privacy screen looks great, it's gonna look even better in a couple months when we stain it to match the rest of the fence in this yard. But remember, because we use pressure treated wood, we need to give it 1 to 3 months to fully dry out. So for now, our work is done. We'll be back, we'll stain it, it's gonna be good as new. As always, do it right, start with Lowe's. Want to learn more? Be sure to check out the Lowe's YouTube channel for great step-by-step and how-to videos, and lowes.com/howto for all kinds of projects.